Vaya, Fede, saludos a todas las personas. No en el sentido de que obviamente que tú entiendas de la cultura de ellos. Tú me preguntas, claro que tú me preguntas, pero a mí me llega un cheque toda la semana. Saludos, muy buenas noches, muy buenas tardes, muy buenos días, según tú estés viendo este video. Gracias por conectarte conmigo. Hoy te habla Drago Mendoza y en realidad ha sido una semana bien difícil, ya que mucha gente ha visto el video que pusimos de un compañero de nosotros. Pero pues tengo aquí una persona ahora mismo bien importante que había cuadrado con él para mí en la cuestión de la industria del cómic, el Mr. David Campiti. Y pues nada, le agradezco un montón a ustedes que estamos aquí. Vamos a ver qué podemos recibir de información de una persona que lleva 25 años, lleva más en la industria también de cómics y también es un agente y te puede proveer muchos recursos ahora mismo. Veremos a ver. Bueno, nada, vamos a traerlo aquí. De hecho, me perdonan porque voy a tratar de hablar inglés completamente en toda la entrevista. El que no entienda inglés me escribe, cualquier cosa que no entienda le puedo explicar en español. Mr. David habla inglés completo. Mi inglés es un poquito broken. So, vamos a ver que todos podemos salir, cómo sale esto aquí hoy. Bueno, con nada. Saludos.
Hello.
David, how are you?
I am doing well. I'm sorry I can't speak Spanish as part of this, but the way my life has gone, in order to deal with everybody I deal with all over the world, I'd have to speak Spanish, Portuguese, Ilongo, the Tagalog, Italian, Japanese. Unfortunately, I barely know English, so let's go.
You barely know Spanish, right? So that's okay. That's okay. Don't worry. We're gonna help up today with my Spanish and your English. So that's okay. So everyone here, I know who you are. I've been following you from Facebook a long time ago. So I know what you're doing. I know everything. I love when you put your feedback on how to do things, how to go to your agency, how people are doing wrong. But right now, people are new to you. I want you to introduce them to them. Who is David Campiti?
All right. So David Campiti. I live in Orlando, Florida, about 30 minutes from Disney World. Lived here for about 11 years. I've been in the comic business 40 years.
40 years.
I started in 1982 writing for Pacific Comics. By 1984, I was writing Superman at DC. I was packaging comics into the mid to late 80s. I became a publisher in 1988, publishing Innovation Comics, doing a lot of licensed comics, Lost in Space, Dark Shadows, Beauty and the Beast, Quantum Leap, Anne Rice's Vampire Lestat, dozens of these licensed books. And then in 1993, I left Innovation to start Glass House Graphics to represent artists originally from Brazil. And now it's expanded to become the largest comic century agency in the world. We have over 200 artists in much of the world at this point. And so we have artists, letterers, colorists, cover painters, designers, even a few writers that folks I've known for a long time. And we have partner offices in Italy and in Brazil and in Indonesia, and a color studio in India. So these books are better traveled than I am, so we get a lot of talent from all over the planet. So it's very nice to be able to have access to that wider range of talent that we can bring to American comic book publishers. And for the last 12 years or so, we've been working in animation. So you've seen bits of our work. If you've seen Horton Hears a Who and Rio and Romeo and Juliet, and some of our people have done designs on the new Looney Tunes and a couple other movies that have come out.
Okay.
And right now we're doing just starting some animation on a Christmas season pilot called Grubs, and that should be coming out next Christmas. And we're in negotiations for a couple other movies. So it's good to be involved in all these things, because that means we can find jobs for a lot of artists.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
In addition to that, I do some writing. I've as I say, I started as a writer 40 years ago, and I'm still writing. I'm doing things like Goddess Girls and Heroes in Training. These graphic novels for Simon & Schuster that are coming out right now.
So those are your comics that you write?
I write those, and then our artists, letterers, colorists do all the other work on them.
Okay, yes, I have that one.
Yeah, and then stuff like Dragon Kingdom, we do the artwork, the letters, the colors. A lot of people who think about comic books only think in terms of the regular comic publishers, Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, IDW, that sort of thing. And yet we do, I'm not kidding, almost 5,000 pages of artwork a year for Simon & Schuster.
Oh, wow.
People hear that, and in their minds it's like, 500 pages? Did he say? No, 5,000 pages a year.
5,000.
Because each of these books is 150 to 200 pages, and we will do 6 of each book in a year. So it's a very labor-intensive production process. And we're doing 8 different books, and you add it up, and it's close to 5,000 pages.
Oh,
and that's just Simon & Schuster. Now you add Marvel, Dark Horse, DC, IDW, Chimera, Kingstone, Hasbro, Mattel, Lego, all these others, and it adds up. We do a lot of work.
Because most of them, any other companies call you, they don't see as you're working with DC. Marvel is gonna call you. They don't have the problem with that. So every company go to you, right?
Yeah. As long as the editors know us, we get the work. There's a lot of good word of mouth that comes. It's like I was told by the art director of Simon & Schuster that they called us because DreamWorks recommended my company.
Okay.
Wow. DreamWorks Publishing liked what we were doing, and they said, you need a company that's going to handle thousands of pages for you. You got to call Dave Campiti. You got to call Glasshouse. They can do it. And that's how we got that job. So this is our fourth year of doing work for them. So we must be doing something right.
So that's good for you. That's good. That's good. So I have here a friend of mine that's Alex Forrest is telling the same thing that I'm thinking about, because he's saying that you are working for 4 years. That's almost his age.
Hey, I'm feeling old now.
I'm thinking the same thing, because you say you started working on it in 1982. I have 2 years. I have 2 years when you were when I wasn't still in potty training. You were working on comic books.
Yeah, I've been doing this a little while. So sometimes an artist will send artwork to me, and I will have questions about the storytelling. And I will say something like, okay, I'm not a beginner here. I know how to read a comic book. Why can't I understand this? And I have them explain the storytelling to me, and then I walk them through how it could be done better. Because I've been at this a long time. So obviously I'm a big fan of comics, or I wouldn't have stuck with it all this time.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to love comic books. You even through sometimes we go and the harder parts of the going through the artists and the frustration, because and there's a thing that we say that an artist have everything. Like I have said, being an artist it has the good things and the bad things, and we see the frustrations and everything. We have the egos, we have the everything, but right now we have the muse, we have the positive things of being an artist, and you go through all of that, because right now you're telling me you are working with a lot of talent, so you must go, and I see your feedback, and I see that you mostly come through with many people that doing great work, but there's some people that they're not doing what expected, right?
Yeah, what we find is a lot of artists come into the business, or are trying to break into the business, but they get the wrong feedback from people. They'll get, "Oh, you're a great artist," because that artist draws better than they do. You ask that person, they'll say, "Oh, you're so good, I can't even draw a straight line." Okay, then how do you know how good this artist is if you don't have the understanding of what he's doing?
Yes.
Somebody might be a better artist than this other person, but that doesn't mean they have the skills to do it all. There, as I say in the seminars I teach, there's 4 steps to becoming a great artist. First is the ability to draw. Second is the ability to tell a story in pictures. And that's a very specific thing. A lot of great artists can't do storytelling. So you got to be able to storyboard. You've got to be able to deliver a style that an editor is willing to buy. So it has to be, it can't look old-fashioned unless an editor wants something that looks old-fashioned.
Okay.
And if in that editor's mind, old-fashioned is something that looked like, 90s era Marvel or Image or DC work, if that's old-fashioned to them, then you're not going to get a job. If it looks like, 1950s artwork from Wayne Boring or Dick Sprang or whoever was the artist, and that's not what they need, you could do a terrific job doing that. But if it's not a style an editor is willing to buy, then you're kind of out of luck. The last step is having the professional attitude. I will get quite a few people who come in fresh and they think they know it all, and they don't want to listen. And any criticism they get, they take personally. "Oh, you hate me." "I don't even know you. I'm responding to these drawings that you've done on a piece of paper or a tablet. That's what I'm referring to." So being able to understand and process criticism and advice and apply that to your work is real important. Being able to communicate with an editor is very important. So a lot of people miss these things that I think are very basic, but the artists sometimes don't grasp them. And I can understand that, because if you think about it, many artists' lives are spent in front of a screen. Either they're drawing on a tablet or they're drawing on an artboard like you see behind me here, or
On a canvas.
Yeah, some variation of that. So a lot of artists live lonely lives. And I know a bunch of them that their idea of a social life is, as they're sitting there drawing, they're talking to a friend on a video camera. And it's like, well, maybe I'll get out for an hour tonight if I can get this page done. So that they become so insular in their lives, so kind of closed that their communication skill with a client is not as strong as it should be. And so that's one of the many things that I try to coach artists through when they need it.
David, when you were talking about styles, what do you think about someone copying a style of an already made penciler? Like if I come with the pages copying the style of John Madureira, of Jim Lee, Juan Portacho, what do you think as an editor?
Right.
Is that a good thing?
There are two ways that artists get in. Either being a very good copy of somebody else, or bringing something fresh and new and wonderful. But think of it this way: if you were reading comics back in the late '90s, when Image Comics really exploded, and you had Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri and all the others, and you had, it seemed like, dozens of imitations of them, working not only for Image, but for Marvel and for DC. Now, look around. You had 30 Jim Lee imitators back then. Now, who's left? Jim Lee. You had 25 Mark Silvestri imitators back then. Now, who's left? Mark Silvestri. The guy who invents the style that everybody loves is the one that keeps the job. They come in, they become the superstar. All the guys who copy eventually just kind of fade away or become something else. So the guys that become the stars pretty much stay the stars. The imitators vanish, or they become something new and fresh themselves. When Terry Dodson, I love Terry Dodson's work. You look at his earliest stuff, even his stuff on like Harley Quinn and so forth, and he was doing a very good riff on Adam Hughes at the time. Well, Adam Hughes continued to develop and become something else, but Terry Dodson did too. So you look at Adam Hughes now, you look at Terry Dodson now, they both have open and clean styles, but they're very different because they both grew as artists as time went on. And Terry Dodson figured out how to do it quickly enough that he could still churn out monthly books. So, and that's a terrific thing. So our fans get a lot of great artwork every month.
Okay, thanks. I ask you that question because when I started, I was a very fan of John Madureira, and I was trying not to copy. I was trying to do my art on my own, but inspired with some things in John Madureira because I love John Madureira. Everything that he done, I love it. So, but right now, I'm evolving and trying to do something new. I still have that still niche about John Madureira, but I see something different about my art. And I know because I heard on the most of the Facebook groups and everything that copying another style is like a swipe for some people, like a bad thing. But
well, if it's a crutch, if it becomes the only thing that you can do, and you're only imitating the surface elements and you're not learning why they do it, then it's a problem, because you're not going to learn and grow as an artist. You're going to become all technique, and imitating somebody else's technique is like being a photocopy of a photocopy, because you're not really getting into the thinking of why that artist that you're copying did it that way in the first place. Neil Adams, the great Neil Adams. Well, I was up at Continuity one day, and he told me, An artist's style is everything he does wrong. And I laughed. And he said, no, I'm not joking. I'm serious about it. And I said, how, what do you mean? He said, well, if an artist drew it right, it would look like a photograph.
Yes.
So everything the artist does to interpret reality so that it's not a photograph becomes his style. The way he renders hair, the way he'll draw eyes, the way he'll, every single thing about his technique is his style. And the more I thought about it, the more I said, okay, Neil Adams is right once again, because it was an intelligent way of looking at it. Now, I work with a lot of artists who are great at imitating other styles. But the guys who can do that are ones that, I think the phrase one of them used was, I broke the code. They don't just imitate the lines and, oh, well, he's drawing on model this way and this is how he draws a face. They bore down to, this is why the artist does it that way. And once they get into the thinking process, they become better at imitating those styles, and it becomes almost effortless for them. That, okay, I can do the Disney house style because this is what they're trying to do, or this is what they have to achieve. And then they manage it. Or if somebody comes along and I don't know if you remember artist Al Rio. Al Rio was one of our top guys out of Brazil for quite a few years, worked for Image and DC and Marvel and so forth. And I did a book called Exposure with him for a bunch of issues. And he could do a dead-on imitation of J. Scott Campbell.
Okay.
He could also do an Adam Hughes kind of thing. He could kind of do a John Romita, a classic John Romita 1960s style. He could do dead-on Disney. He understood the thinking behind the styles. So if somebody said, I need you to do this, he'd study it for a while. Okay, I can do that. I know how now. And as a result, he became very valuable because no matter what an editor needed at the time, anything from cartoony to very realistic to very stylized to whatever, he knew how to do it. So okay. He was never without a job.
I will explain something that happened to me when you told about copying and the interpretation of someone, on an artist. It happens to me in the Comic-Con. Someone asked me to draw a Deku version, and I did my interpretation of Deku of My Hero Academia. What happened? The person loved it, but another person that was looking told me that is not Deku. It doesn't look like Deku.
You weren't drawing it on model. You were doing your stylized interpretation.
Yeah. I told him, yeah, this is my interpretation of Deku. It has everything. So why you want me to draw the same picture that you're watching in the animation? That's not my style.
Yeah.
So you want me a style? You want me a drawing of me? On me drawing Deku? That's what you get.
Yeah. And that's fine if that is what somebody's asking for. We right now are in the process of drawing hundreds of My Hero Academia cards for a client.
You do that?
Yeah. So
for the game?
Yeah, every card has to be absolutely on model. So we have to submit the roughs, and they go through it. Okay, you need to move this eye 1/16 of an inch this way.
Okay, I understand.
It's got to be absolutely right, or it's not accepted. So
yeah, because that's different because you are doing like the interpretation of the same anime. You're copying the same style.
Exactly. We're being hired to do it on model.
On model. That's okay. Now I see my friend Javier Rivera have a quote here. And maybe we want to read it. We want you to take from us we want you at first to steal from us because you can't steal. You will take what you give and you will put in your own voice what you that's how you will find your voice. And that's how you begin. And then one day someone will steal from you.
That
But it's
sounds
not
about
because of
right.
you.
Yeah. Um, two of my two great friends of mine, Mike Diodato, Will Conrad, both started into the business with very different styles than they have now. What's great about both of those guys is they never stop learning. You will come across many artists in the business that they spend, the first 10 years learning, how to put together a great comic. Then after that, it's kind of like their stuff is less than it was in the first 10 years. It's like the excitement, the energy level is gone, and they're just going through the motions. They've stopped learning. They've stopped being interested. But guys like Diodato or Will Conrad have continued to grow and mature in styles. If you look at Mike Diodato's work, when I first introduced him to Marvel and DC and continuity, and he started working for them, his style was so very different. If you look at his run on Wonder Woman, the figures got more elongated all across the 12 issues that he did. By the time he was working full-time at Marvel, it was all this very stylized combination of Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri and something else, Neil Adams in there. And he did that for several years. And then he backed off. He incorporated a lot of photo reference. He started shooting new reference for everything. So he wouldn't find a still picture of someone talking. He'd have somebody take a picture of him leaning in, being exaggerated with this. And then he'd use that as the basis of his drawing. And then as all the digital techniques had come along and folks started working on tablets and so forth, he learned all of that stuff. So as he's continued to go, his style has continued to grow, mature, change. So it's always fascinating to see, what's he going to do next? Will Conrad was the same way. He went through his own growth spurt. And for a while, he was doing a very good duplication of Mike Diodato's style, to the point where sometimes they'd each draw half an issue of Secret Avengers or something. And some people couldn't tell who drew which half. But now he's continued to mature, and he's been working for DC and AWA and so forth. And it's another style that's just wonderful to look at, just to see how good it is and how strong the work continues to be. These are guys who don't get bored. They continue to learn.
Okay, and you say that Mike Dorado takes still photos or something.
For many years, yes.
May I ask you as an editor and as CEO of the company, that you don't see something wrong with people taking photos and drawing over there in the poses and everything that's for you.
Let me ask this. If you had been editor of the Saturday Evening Post and you were getting these wonderful paintings from Norman Rockwell, would you have rejected them because he used photos for his reference?
Well, for me reference, I don't see that as a wrong.
Because that's what someone like Diodato was doing. Every artist uses reference in some way, shape, or form. In Diodato's case, he realized, I don't know how much you know about his early history. He was drawing books like Lost in Space, Quantum Leap, Beauty and the Beast. So it was all referenced off of TV shows.
Okay.
And so To get likenesses, he was having to use references. And the problem was the work looked stiff. It was frozen because it was capturing the photos.
Yes.
So he learned as he was continuing to develop in his style and his techniques. He said, those don't have the energy that I need. I want to draw more realistically than I was doing when I was doing this more imagey type stuff, but I want it to have the energy, the power it should have. So he started staging photos so that they would have the dramatic foreshortening and just all the power and dynamics that he would need. Many times he would do a layout the way he wanted with all the energy that it needed to have. And then he'd shoot a new photo following the layout he'd already drawn so that he could get the details right. And it was wonderful to see because I was there for some of it as he was shooting things. There was a drawing of the Hulk that he did with a woman in his arms. That was me and my wife. I did the pose. I was okay, Dave, stand with your arms apart like this, hold her like this. No, hold her up like this and lean toward the camera. Okay, that's it. Took the picture and then did the drawing from that.
Okay, wow.
So it was fun to be part of that process. So my view is anything that gets an artist to where he needs to be, whether it's reference, because every artist has reference, either thousands and thousands of things on their computers, or artists used to have their morgues, their file cabinets just full of stuff. But every artist works that way. Somebody who tries to draw everything out of their head is going to end up with this kind of generic world where nothing seems quite convincing. So everybody's got to use reference now and then.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I understand because sometimes we have to go through references just to meet deadlines. That's all right. And the thing is, I've been hearing from people that when you do references, it's wrong. People tell me that it is wrong. You're gonna do that. You're gonna take
Anybody
shortcuts.
that's telling you that, what was their last big selling comic?
That's what I'm telling.
If they didn't have one, then it sounds more like they're jealous than anything else, because it's not a reasonable critique. Every artist uses reference, some more than others. Some do it well, some use it poorly. Some rely a lot on using something like Google SketchUp to create their environments and backgrounds, and then they just import and trace the Google SketchUp thing and don't add anything to it. It looks incomplete. It looks artificial. But if they take what they've gotten from it and say, okay, now I need to add light and shadow, I need to add cracks in the building, I need to add blowing leaves on the street, all these things to give a feeling of movement, a feeling of authenticity to the stuff. So it's all the stuff that they, as an artist, add to the reference. It's not just a tracing of the reference.
Yes, I understand that because sometimes I have to grow to explain this situation. I have like go through like an essay to say mangakas on Japan that they're right now popular do the same thing. They take buildings, photos, and change them into pictures, backgrounds, and everything. That they have to go meet deadlines they go through. So reference is not that bad, and if you don't see it, so
Everyone has to use a reference. I remember, I think it was an issue of Avengers or something. There was this big shot. Diodato drew this. It was a big shot of alien cityscape, and I said, "Man, that's crazy. How did you come up with that?" And he laughed and he said, "I didn't." So, what did you do? And he pulled out I think it was an old Warren magazine from like 1969. And Alex Nino had drawn a spaceship. And he said, okay, look, he pulled out the magazine, went to the page, he turned the spaceship upside down, said, look at the spaceship. That's what you drew there. He said, yeah, I took that, I scanned it, I reversed it. So I took a spaceship that I turned, scanned, reversed, and the bottom of the spaceship is now the top of the city.
Oh, wow.
And then he went and he added all these details to give it more depth, to give it, did a nice light and shadow technique and all that. So there was so much creativity to it, but the starting point was something that you never would have guessed. The mistake that a lot of people make when they're using reference is, oh, I'm drawing a Batman figure. Well, let's see, how did Neil Adams draw Batman? Oh, and then they try to copy that. No, never use a Batman swipe to draw Batman.
That's a swipe. That's a swipe.
So it becomes harder to figure out.
I understand. So, David, let's go through back with your origin story. So,
Sure.
what made you decide to go to comics? Besides loving them, what made you think that I want to work with comic books?
You know, when I was a kid, reading comics, absolutely loved comics. I started reading, I don't know, 1967 or something like that. And the first comic I remember reading was called America's Best TV Comics. It was a 64-page, 25-cent comic that was a tie-in to what the ABC network had on Saturday mornings.
Okay.
So it had a Fantastic Four story, a Spider-Man story, a George of the Jungle, a Casper, and I forget what else. Absolutely loved it. And then a few weeks later, my parents took us on vacation to somewhere, and they bought me a stack of comic books that I read in the back seat while Dad was driving. And that's where my love affair with comics started.
Oh, wow.
And by the time I reached high school, my dream job, as it were, I don't know why anybody dreams of labor, but my dream job was to work in comics and work with Stan Lee, and because at the time Stan was kind of the legend to us kids, and so fast forward to many years later, and I worked with Stan Lee, so Glasshouse Graphics did all the artwork for 2 seasons of the TV show Who Wants to Be a Superhero.
Oh, wow.
The Winners comic books, both seasons, we did the artwork. We did artwork for inserts for some of the DVD cartoons they released. And then I wrote that book that we're holding right there. Stan Lee's How to Draw Comics. I wrote it in 3 weeks while in the Philippines for Christmas vacation. I got a call that they needed the book done in an insane amount of time. And not only was I able to make it sound like Stan, but because I teach seminars on creating comics all over the world, I already knew how to do it. It was already in my head, so all I had to do is type it up.
Okay, well, so you write everything, and then
The whole book in 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So people keep asking me, Dave, why you know all this stuff? Why don't you write a book on how to draw comics? I already did.
Stanley, what is his name is Stanley, right? So I have seen that book, and I didn't know about that. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Go inside and look at the credits. I'm credited, but
oh, wow.
So the actual title is Stan Lee's How to Draw Comics. So Stan didn't write any of it, but I had talked to Stan so much that some of the things that he had told me over the years, of course, made its way in there. And it's.
But David, the thing is that you did jump about dreaming about working on comic books to go to Stanley. What was the decision, the big decision to tell you, okay, I'm gonna start working with comic books, or you started working and then you didn't know, oh, I'm already working with comic books. What happened?
All right. In 1982, I had moved from Wheeling, West Virginia, up to North Attleboro, Massachusetts. Life change. I was hired as the one and only copywriter for LG Balfour Company. That was a jewelry company that makes rings for class rings and the Super Bowl and things
Okay,
like
yes.
that. So all the advertising, all the catalogs, all the brochures came out of Balfour. The same week I moved up there, there was a convention in Boston, and I went and I met Al Williamson, the great artist Al Williamson, and we were talking at the bar at the end of the first day at the convention, and I was telling him, I've wanted to break into comics as a writer. I write professionally, doing this, that, and the other. And he said, "Well, what kind of stories you want to tell?" And I rattled off a couple of one-line stories. And he said, "I like those." And he put me in touch with David Scroggie at Pacific Comics,
Okay.
and I sold him those stories that I told Al Williamson about. So that got me started. And then I discovered that it was because there were so many publishers besides Marvel and DC that needed help. They didn't have strong editorial staffs. So it was easier for them if you could bring them an artist with the project.
Okay.
So that far back, I started making connections, meeting artists. And so I would make pitches to editors. Well, I want to do this story or this book, and this artist, this letterer, this colorist are already attached. And so before you know it, I was packaging whole books for publishers. And so I was doing dozens and dozens of books that way between 1985 and 1987.
Oh, wow.
And then it works as long as you're paid, but we weren't paid for a bunch of stuff. So when we realized we were not going to get that money from them, I decided to go in a different direction. And I wrote a business plan for what became Innovation Publishing. And I got started off doing some original stuff. The Hero Alliance series that Kevin Juera and I had co-created, and a few other original things. And then we got into licensing. We started with the Vampire Lestat, the Anne Rice bestseller, and then grew it into a whole line of licensed books. And we did that till I left the company in '93. And the company stuck around about 10 months after I left, and that was it. So that's when I realized I'm not a big fan of spreadsheets. I don't like I don't like dealing with the distributors and worrying about the cash flow of this and that and the other and all that non-creative stuff. I love working with artists. And so I realized, well, I've found I teamed up with a guy named Helcio de Carvalho in Brazil, and he was bringing me artists at the end of my run with Innovation. When I left Innovation and started Glasshouse Graphics, I started representing the artists that he had brought me. And then we just kept expanding and expanding, and other agents came in and tried to get their piece of the pie. And so I continued to move on, finding artists in the Philippines and Canada and Italy and all these other countries. And that's how it became as big as it is now.
Wow.
So it's been a long ride. So We're coming up on 30 years of Glasshouse Graphics.
Those are the comics that you worked earlier.
Not that one. I don't know what that one is, but
No,
no.
I have those with your email.
I don't know. Maybe it's something somebody sent me and I put it by mistake. But everything else you were showing there was
Okay.
yeah. That other one. I was in Italy.
That's one
yeah,
in Italy.
yeah. I was in Italy there, and that was a lot of fun. I hope to get back to Italy in October.
Okay.
But, okay, Mike Deodato's sketchbook that's been released in Brazil, and we have a version in the U.S. that we did on Kickstarter. Pup Detectives, that's one of the books for Simon and Schuster.
Okay. Those are your earlier. Those are the recent works of your Schuster, right?
Yeah, those are both Simon and Schuster, The Goddess Girls and Dragon Kingdom. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, there's my website.
I will go to the website of your agency, right?
Yes.
So I get to have some screenshot because I was not, I didn't want to go to the page and see what right now we are seeing what you are what Glasshouse graphics is representing, right?
Yes. So we have basically every kind of service. So somebody needs pencilers, inkers, letterers, colorists, animators, production people, logo designers, web designers, writers, but we have it all.
Yes, that's why we have here. We have the first screenshot of the first menu that it says services. So we see that you have everything: advertising, manga, animation, audio, books, and more, and goes through everything that you are offering right now.
Yep.
And then when you go to the talent and you selected it there, animation, colorists, digital artists, inkers, letterers, manga
Yeah.
artists, painters, pencilers. So we see here that's one of on one of the pages of your clients, right?
Yes.
And that's the Spider-Man or Marvel comic books. So we see here that you have great talent working with you today, and most of the people know him, but David Alvarez is one of your representatives, right?
Everybody that you see on that roster, we have. Now there'll be some artwork that's up there that's not ours because maybe a colorist that is ours colored the work for the publisher. So
Okay.
I don't want to mislead people.
But it's involved. It's involved.
Yeah. So yeah, there's at least 200 talents there on the website
As well.
Yeah.
The other thing that they see here that you are giving tips on your website too.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Um, it's amazing to me that a lot of artists trying to break into comics seem to think that they're going to just magically get the ability to draw comics. You'd be amazed at the number of people who will write me a portfolio. It's not very good. And they'll say things like, well, give me a chance. And I'm thinking, give you a chance to do what? If your finished drawing isn't strong enough, then if I have you draw a story, it's not going to be strong enough. If your storytelling isn't good enough and I give you the story to draw, your storytelling's still not going to be good enough. They're not going to magically get the ability to do it. So that's why up until recently, I would spend so many hours out of a week just going over every portfolio and saying, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to learn. But honestly, over the past 5 years, 6 years, people have not wanted to hear critiques. They either want to hear, it's great, you're hired, or they don't want to hear anything. You know, every critique of the work becomes a personal insult to the people. And that's kind of sad because you can't learn that way. And if you're honest with them about the work, it's no longer just honest. They always tack the word brutally there. So if you say, thank you for submitting your work, but it's not at a professional level that I can sell to my clients. I think that's a nice, basic, general, one sentence, non-committal thing. It's just not good enough. And I get emails back. Well, you're so brutally honest. Why couldn't you find something nice to say?
Wow.
If they think that's brutal, wait till they start taking their work to conventions and start dealing with editors who've had a bad day. You know, it's really going to get rough. So there, a lot of artists just aren't willing to take a critique like that. The ones that do, the ones that learn from the critiques and do better, are the ones I'm always glad to see. You know, there are some that I've worked with, and it might have taken years, and they'll send me stuff every few months, and it gets incrementally better, and I'll give them feedback, and they'll try again. The ones that impress me are the ones that actually really want to learn. So if you send me 5 pages of a Superman story, and I give you a critique on that Superman story, you shouldn't go and draw an X-Men story next. You should take that Superman story and fix it. Apply the stuff that you've learned from me, do it better, and resubmit it. But very rarely do artists do it. It's like, oh, I'm bored, I'm going to go on to the next thing. Then how do they learn? If they couldn't see their mistakes in that sequence that they've submitted and redo it better, and then get feedback on it to learn that it's better, then I wasted my time with the review, and they've wasted their time because they didn't learn anything. So it's really important that if somebody is asking for a review and are getting good advice, that they learn from that advice, or they just don't get any better.
Yeah. So someone asked me. Someone asked me about a tip on how to get better. He told me that he was practicing. He was gonna get better, and I told him that it's not practice what makes you a better penciler, better comic book artist. Is seeing what you're failing or what you need to improve already, because you can practice every day, and if you're not seeing something to improve, you're gonna still going to be the same thing, doing the same thing year to year. And he didn't understand me. He get an argument. He said, I didn't understand, I don't understand. I told him that when I was practicing with my comic book, sometimes I didn't have time to draw because I have to go to work. I have many things to do. Didn't have free time, and sometimes I practice in my head because I was seeing a video YouTube how to do something that I wasn't able to do it. And when I get to the paper, I was doing already work like I was doing like 5 times a week, practice the same thing.
Yeah.
And he didn't understand that.
Well, that is sort of one of the things that I've had to explain to artists that tell me, I've been drawing, 4 hours a day for as long as I can remember, and I would say, here's the problem. all you're doing is reinforcing your mistakes. You didn't learn how to do this specific thing right. So you've taught yourself for 4 hours a day for all these years how not to do it. You've done it wrong. So you need to get the feedback from the editors or from an agent or from a better professional artist to show you how to do it right and then learn to do it right. And it's also a matter of, just because somebody gets older, I realize there are many things that as you get older, you have life experience and you get better at things. But that doesn't necessarily automatically come from drawing. You've got to continue to practice, continue to learn from your mistakes, learn how to do it better every step of the way. I had this was a sweet guy for a convention that once upon a time I went to a convention in Michigan twice a year. And so every 6 months I'd go and I'd see this guy at a convention. He'd bring me 3 or 4 pages and I'd see him and he'd want a critique and I'd give him the critique. And I'd go away, I'd come back to the next show. He'd show me a few new pages. There never seemed to be much improvement. And every convention I would tell him what to do better. He needs to do this. And there was one convention where the stuff was a little bit better. He'd spent more time on the faces. And I said, you know what? If you keep this up, really working at it, in 6 months to a year, you'd be good enough for a job. Oh, wow. Really? Well, I missed the next convention, which was 6 months later. So I went back a year later. He shows up. He says, I'm ready. And he handed me the new pages, and 4 new pages, and my heart sank. They weren't any better than the stuff a year before.
Okay.
And I said, I got to ask this. How many pages have you drawn in the past year? And he said, well, I got married about 10 months ago. And then we went on our honeymoon, and then we moved to such and such a house, and then I got a new job, and then, well, last week I heard you were going to be at this convention, so I did these 4 pages.
Oh wow!
I said,
so he didn't practice or anything.
Yeah. So I said, so what you're telling me is you drew 4 pages in a year. That was your entire practice for the year. He said, well, you said I'd be ready. I said, yeah. I said, if you really work at it. I mean, if you drew 2 pages every day of your life for a year, you will have worked through all the problems and learned how to do things correctly. I never saw him again.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was just.
Maybe he gave up. He gave up.
Yeah, it was too much of an effort to get him there. And as I said earlier, you don't magically get better. You've got to put in the time and effort to be good enough.
Yes. David, we have a question for you today. Where we can submit the story, and if I can submit a story just to get it criticized, but it's not a story for a comic book. It's a sci-fi story. He writes books.
Okay. That's not a market I deal with. We don't deal with fiction novels and short stories. I have several writers on my roster that do write novels, and they have a separate agent for that. So
okay.
I can't give you an honest answer for that because that's not part of what I do.
I understand. And Javier have a story here about when Greg Capullo told about a story when he was starting. Greg Capullo has a great story of Larry Hama destroying his portfolio, but he kept going back with his newer art. Then Greg later. When we got hired and met again with Larry Hama, Greg told him that he was right about the critique of the art.
Yeah. There was another convention that I did. I was on a panel with four or five artists and me, and they're asking questions about breaking in and critiques and how do you prepare a proper portfolio, how do you deal with an editor, all that stuff. And we're going down the row, and I'm like the last one answering, and I'm giving all the advice, and then the artist is like 3 up from me said, Dave, I don't know if you remember this, but 5 years ago, I brought you my paintings because I wanted to be a cover painter. And I gave you what I thought was my best stuff. And you gave me a ton of advice, and I got angry. And I left and I said, what the hell does he know? And I went off and argued and fought and complained to other artists, and they told me you were right. So I ended up following what you did, and now I'm painting covers for Dark Horse. So thank you. And I said, well, you're welcome. Where's my commission? but that happens a lot. As they say, they want to shoot the messenger because they don't like the message. But yeah, I have nothing to gain by being negative and in the way of critiquing the work. I try to explain what doesn't work and why and how to do it better, because what I have to gain from you being a great artist is, gee, maybe you'll come to me and say, I want Glasshouse Graphics to represent me. And then I'll make a little bit of money, a commission finding you jobs. But
yeah, that's the purpose. They're happy with your critique and everything, that you improve them. So
yeah,
you can see how.
And that has happened. That has happened so much. It is so wonderful when everything works right. I had an artist in the Philippines that he came to me and he said, I don't know how to draw comics. He says, I think I know how to draw, but I don't know how to draw comics. And he shows me his portfolio, and it's all drawn on typing paper. And it's all single illustrations, very tight, clean pencil, but it's brilliant stuff. It's, a mother walking with her daughter, holding a newspaper over in the rain. A teenage boy and a teenage girl up in a tree, flirting with one another. And the teenage boy, has his little brother next to him. It's like pulling on his shirt. And so he's not looking cool at all. Just all these real life things with genuine body language, real expression. It was in a very manga influenced style, but you could tell this guy knew what he was doing. And I said, you're great. I can find you work like right now if you just do this in panels. He says, well, I don't think I know how to do storytelling. And I said, you're doing storytelling in every one of these single illustrations. Let me guide you through this. And he said, yes, I want to learn. And within a few months, he was working steady. And that was in, 2001? No, 2000. And he has been working with me since the end of 2000. And so he has drawn so many projects. He's the artist right now who's doing the My Hero Academia cards.
Okay.
And he's drawn a Lara Croft Tomb Raider and Wolverine manga and just so many other things across the decades. And he got so good that when I'm in the Philippines, he's helped me teach my seminars about storytelling, the very thing that he wasn't sure he could do when he started.
Okay. Yes, he was doing it. He was doing it already because bringing a still image with a lot of stuff happening is very very different. But it's more accurate and more good than just sequential art. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yes.
So, David, another question. Right now, you have been 40 years working, and do you see and do you think is the portfolios should be given in like the same was given 10 years ago? Because
Uh,
there's a variation of opinions right now about giving digital portfolios or just having a media like Instagram or something with my art. People will get noticed.
all right.
Uh,
Are you asking about the actual portfolios and how to get an editor to notice you? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay.
That's the question. Because
Because,
there's a lot of variation people right now that
all right, because
attack it differently.
yeah, when
than
you
that.
started, I thought you were asking, are the portfolios we're seeing these days better or worse than what we were seeing 20 years ago?
Okay.
Where the answer to that question is portfolios have actually gotten worse because so many people draw digitally and are using all the digital tricks, importing backgrounds and importing photos and this trick and that gray tone and just so many other things that are shortcuts that in the hands of an excellent artist, they become wonderful tools. In the hands of an artist who's not as good, they become crutches. So all the weaknesses are very visible in a lot of digital portfolios that are done. If something looks first glance, oh, okay, he did that on a tablet, I shouldn't be able to tell. If it's well done, it should just look like good art. I shouldn't see all the, let's call it all the seams, all the problems, all the shortcuts.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's a problem. In terms of people submitting, it's still smart to submit actual PDF portfolios to editors, the ones that are willing to look at them and advertise. Yes, you can send portfolios. I know DC does. Submit your online portfolio and then we'll meet you at a convention kind of thing.
Okay.
People can still submit portfolios to me online. I'll look at everything. Yeah, I no longer do very long reviews unless they're worth it, but I still look at everything. Having a great online presence, a lot of followers on Instagram or Facebook or a YouTube channel, all that stuff is wonderful for your career. I get clients right now that ask me, which of your artists has a big online following, because they hope to sell to those fans.
Okay.
And they hope that if they hire that artist, the artist will promote the work on their social media so that it's free advertising for their company. So, the bigger audience you have with your Instagram, your Facebook, your YouTube channel, your whatever it is that you have, the better. Because it's a whole different life out there when the only contact you had with other fans and professionals was going to a convention or making a trip to New York City. So it's a whole different world.
But David, have you met a client or customer so that you have seen on the media platforms and say, "Oh, I want to represent that," without submitting a portfolio to you?
3, just 3 that were so good that I wanted to work with those guys. And they were, all three are on my roster. And because they checked on me and said, yes, we want to work with you too. But where I get a number of people is word of mouth, just like we get jobs, like I was telling you earlier, where an artist that's already on my roster will know another artist or will meet an artist online or at a convention, and they'll say, oh, I like their stuff. Dave, take a look at their work. And I'll look, and sometimes I'll like it, and sometimes I'll say, all right, let me try you on a test, or show me your work again in 6 months as you've been working at it, and I'll take another look. Now, I'll look at stuff from everywhere, but I don't go chasing after artists, not as a rule. That's why in my entire history, I've only gone after 3.
Okay.
And because I don't really need more artists as a rule. I have a lot of them. I could use more great artists, but Glass House does have A level, B level, and C level artists because not everybody can be your top guys, and not everybody's going to pay the top budget. So if somebody comes to me and says, I only have $150 a page for art, lettering, and color, I need to see if I have somebody that can deliver that. But if I have a more major company that comes to me and says, for art, lettering, and coloring, our budget is $500, then I have an artist, a letterer, and a colorist that combined are worth $500. So that's the way it works. But everybody wants better people. I've run across so many artists at conventions that if I am critiquing the work, they will say, but I'm better than, and they'll name my worst artist. Or they'll say, I was looking at Marvel's book and I'm better than, and they'll name Marvel's worst artist. And I, what do you say to that? Congratulations. You don't suck as bad as their worst guy. I mean, everybody I have is better than my worst guy. Everybody Marvel has is better than their worst guy. They want people as good or better than their best guys. So my effort, my search is always to try to find and teach and try to get artists to be the best guys and gals they can possibly be.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I understand you had to feel the needs too for the clients and everyone. That's all right. Oh, so David, one last question about the future, about this industry, about comic books and anything. Do you think that artificial intelligence is gonna be affecting our business? That's the question everybody is talking about.
My smart ass answer is we need more real intelligence in this business. None of that right now matters, because if this business is to remain viable as a print media, then the business needs to grow the distribution, because that's the real trick. Remember, comics were dying in the late 70s and early 80s. Sales were dropping because they were in newsstands, and there was so much fraud in the newsstand distribution business that books weren't getting distributed, or they were and weren't being paid for. And the direct sales market, a whole new way of distributing books, brought new life to the business and kept us going for a lot of years. But now Yeah, all the few distributors that are there are all in disarray, and there's no strong distribution. You know, how can comics related movies be making billions, and yet Marvel publishes a comic and sells 11,000 copies? Really? So that's the real problem, not are people trying to use artificial intelligence to create better artwork? It's that right now isn't even a real issue. The real issue is getting the distribution there, and if they do, then we need smart artists that can still tell a story in visuals, and I don't think that's ever going to change, because this is a visual medium and it's all about telling stories. What I want to cover before we end tonight, because I don't know how long you're going to run here, is
I can go through every. I just absorbing everything that you're saying. That's great that everyone's hearing.
All right. I want people to think about anybody that's here that are thinking about doing artwork, submitting samples for portfolios. Give you a few ground rules that will help. This is not just sending stuff to me. This is to any editor that's out there. They don't want to see tons and tons of pages. You can tell if a guy is good enough with 5 or 6 pages and a cover. That's it. Because if you can't show that you're great in 5 or 6 pages, then it doesn't matter. You look at the top guys in the comic business right now, or the top guys at any point in the past half century. You look at any 5 or 6 pages and a cover and you say, yeah, that guy can do it. If a person has to submit a lot of stuff in hopes that they're going to get noticed, then they really aren't good enough. If you're submitting, they don't want to see as a rule, they don't want to see your sketches. They don't want to see drawings of characters just standing around gritting their teeth and doing this pose. That doesn't help. They want to see sequential pages, characters interacting, body language, gesture, expression, good action, good real life stuff with backgrounds. Try to pick sequential pages that show you can draw a little bit of everything. Because if it's not there in the pages, they assume you're hiding something. And it's like, okay, you didn't draw any animals. I wish you'd drawn a cat in this scene, because at least I'd know if you could draw an animal. And that sort of thing. So when I've created sample plots or scripts, and there's a bunch of them on my website, I try to create sequences that put the artist through his or her paces to draw a lot of different things.
Yeah, like here.
Yeah. That was showing just a technique there. Let me say, if you're interested in this stuff, I have a blog at davidcampiti.com. I've been running this blog for like 10 years. About 2/3 of it is about submitting stuff to comics. Then that's my website, glasshousegraphics.com.
Can we go through the blog? We can go through the blog with the Glasshouse Graphics, is that right?
Yeah, we can do that too. But the glasshousegraphics.com does have a section about submitting stuff, and it has some stuff about layouts, about inking, about penciling. But honestly, a lot of that is outdated because I update the blog.
Okay.
And the blog is often stuff that I will post on Facebook, but I can expand on it in the blog because the format's different, so I can show more images and so forth.
David, have you thought before making your own podcast?
People have asked that a lot for me, and you know how before we got on here, I was saying, "How do I get on your podcast? Where do I go? What do I do?" honestly, I'm running this business full time. Plus, I write. So the question becomes, when would I do a blog or a podcast rather? And I've had people say, "Well, I'll do it for you. I'll set it up for you, and I'll run it. You just have to show up." Okay, I'd be happy to show up and review art samples or talk about whatever you'd like me to talk about. But I don't have time to prepare. That's the thing.
Okay.
I just don't.
But if you have time for the blog, you can do it in the podcast and talk about it. That's really helpful. And you're natural right now. We are seeing what you're saying. So.
But if I could figure out a way to have someone run it for me, then I'd be interested in doing it. But left to my own devices, I'm just too busy. So if I find I actually have an hour to myself, I'm going to spend it with my wife and daughter rather than yet another hour in front of the screen. But I understand there's a value to doing a podcast. Just have to figure out how to do it and not take away too much more of my time.
Okay, I understand. But, that's something that I see that you can go through a podcast and go well.
That would be interesting to do.
Cool.
I don't know if any of your viewers are in Florida. I am going to be at the Kissimmee Comic Con. That is Sunday, September 18th.
Okay.
I've been invited there, and I'll review portfolios and do I'm probably going to do a panel. They haven't told me what the panel is yet, but I'll do it. And if anyone here wants to submit any samples to me, they're welcome to. My recommendation is 5 or 6 pages and a cover. Submit it as a PDF. Put your name as and all contact information on the first page. The name of the PDF should have your name in it. Drago Mendoza, PortFolio, whatever. So you'd be amazed at how many people submit samples to me, and their samples don't tell me who they are. They'll submit a portfolio, and it will say portfolio PDF. And I'll go through. Their name is nowhere in the portfolio. And it's like, okay, I downloaded this 3 days ago. I'm looking at it. I have no idea who sent it to me. And I've gotten 80 samples in the past 3 days.
Oh, wow.
There are some weeks I get 300 samples. I kid you not. So
now those 300 samples, how many go through okay with representing God's House graphics?
Good Lord. A lot of them are repeats. There's some guys that send me stuff every week. And I'm sorry, you don't get better enough in 1 week to for there to be a real difference. But there aren't a lot of guys that we add, maybe on average 1 or 2 a month.
Okay, wow.
That's still up to 24 artists a year that we'll add. And we do that because there are artists that sometimes drop off our roster. For example, I had several artists that we'd been finding work for over the past several years. And I got an email from a couple of them earlier this year that were, "Hey, Dave, I applied for and got a job at such and such animation studio or design studio. And I'm going to be full time there. So I'm not going to have time to do any freelance. So effective such and such a date, just drop me off the roster. When I become available again, I'll let you know." And so those guys come off the roster, and somebody else always comes along that replaces them.
Okay, yes. There's
So
a cycle.
yeah, so there's always artists out there. And then,
Okay.
Sometimes we'll have a big superstar artist that retires or dies or doesn't want to use an agent anymore. It's like, okay, well, good luck, good adventure. And, somebody else comes along, they become big and they're our next star. So it's all right.
Okay, I understand. Yes.
So it's
Well,
a continuing cycle of the past 30 years.
let me do one question that I was like thinking about asking you or not. But this is this situation that happens to me like 2 years ago. I was working. I was starting as a comic book artist, and I wasn't able to draw chibi versions of my character, right, of the comic books. So I hired uh, a friend of mine, and the thing is, I hired her for doing some drawings of chibi versions of my comic book, I mean comic book character, right? She just asked me $15 for each of them, and that was and she knew that I was gonna do with them stickers, some products that because when I reached her, that's why I asked her. Oh, I need this. I need my character in chibi version to be doing some keychains and any other products. So she knew. The thing is that because she wasn't a friend, we didn't do a contract. Sorry, I know, my bad. But the thing is that months ago, she was asking me for more money because she saw that was going well with my comic book, and she thought that I was doing a lot of money with the comics, and she was trying to like cancel me, and she was saying to everybody that I was making more money for something that she wasn't allow me to do because she told me she was an artist and she didn't allow me to do the money anymore selling of the products because it was her art. I told her it was a work for hire situation. I own the intellectual property and I paid her, so she doesn't claim to have to ask more money about it. I do you understand the situation?
Yeah, I know exactly the situation. You screwed up. Um, Understand that it is a business. In the absence of a contract, um, just exchanging money means that you have bought first reproduction rights. All other rights remain with the artist unless you have a contract that says something different. Now, yes, many times between good friends, you never bother with a contract and nobody has a problem. But not everybody remains friends forever. And people sometimes get greedy and situations change, lives change. So many different things can happen. So, a one page or one paragraph agreement, um, in exchange for, $15 per drawing for these 8 drawings. Um, I am purchasing from such and such artist as a work made for hire. No additional fees or royalties are needed. And you both sign and it's done. One paragraph. That's all you need. That way it's clear. On the other hand, there are a lot of work made for hire situations that if the person who owns that as the work made for hire, they're making great money, they decide to be nice guys and they send the person a bonus or royalties or something like that. Marvel has you do everything as a work made for hire. So does DC. But if things sell beyond a certain point or the things are reprinted, they send you reprint money. We're getting reprint money from Marvel and DC for stuff that we did in 1995.
Oh, wow.
So money continues to come in. It's work made for hire, but we had a contract that said it's work made for hire, but you will be getting these incentive payments on all reprints for this and this and this. So it spells it out carefully, and they pay us extra. Now, we've been in other situations where somebody has made a ton of money and has not paid us an extra penny. But we signed a contract that said it was work made for hire, and we don't have any other money coming. So one paragraph makes the difference. If you were making money off your keychains and whatever, and you paid this person a small amount of money, it might have been nice if you had come along and said, oh, here's a few of the keychains that we made, and gee, this is doing better than I thought. So, here's an extra $35. Thank you. That might have made the person quite happy that you were thinking about them. I don't know. I don't know your specific situation, but I would say moving forward, even if the person's your best friend, have a contract, because what happens.
I don't want to get in that kind of situation right now. I'm doing all my work right now because of that.
Mm-hmm. But one paragraph makes all the difference in the world.
Yes, I understand that. No.
Yeah. So, any of your viewers here have any other questions that I can answer?
Is any other question? ¿Hay alguien que tenga que hacer una pregunta antes que David se vaya? Estamos aquí, ya estamos por irnos. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, doesn't see any other question. So, David, we told before, if anyone wants to go talk to you or go submit a portfolio, go to Glass.
To submit a portfolio, they can send it directly to me, David at glasshousegraphics.com.
Okay. That's the email. That's the email that you have, right?
And they want to go through my blog, they can scroll back through tons and tons of posts about breaking into the business, how to deal with editors, how not to deal with editors, mistakes. I talk a lot about mistakes that artists make. Not to insult the artists, because I try my damnedest not to name any names, but I want people to learn from those mistakes so they don't repeat those mistakes themselves.
So right now you're gonna write a blog about a friend of yours that is good. It needs a contact with our friends.
There's a good idea. And I've probably talked about contracts and non-disclosure agreements and all kinds of things in my blogs. And I show in the blog a lot of really bad portfolio samples, or samples where the artist thinks they're great because, their mom told them they were great. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily terrific. But folks don't necessarily want to hear that either. So I try to do as much as I can to teach, and I try to keep it funny sometimes, so that it's an enjoyable read. Okay. And so anything that you've seen me post on Facebook, all about, this artist submitted stuff and doesn't know his own name, or this person submitted all their coloring to the publisher in RGB instead of CMYK. All this stuff that they should know, I explain what went wrong and why.
Yes, and what to do. So
Yeah,
you are trying to give a story so people don't make the same error.
exactly right.
Yes, that's all right. That's good. I've been reading them a long time ago. I learned a lot, right? Really. So, David, when you said that they could submit their portfolios, you are saying not for criticisms. If anyone wants to submit the work to see if they can be hired with that,
Yeah, if you're good enough, I'll tell you. If you're close, I'll tell you and give you advice of how to get good enough. If you're um, good enough but don't have any substantial credits, I will probably send you a sample plot or script to try to draw a few pages. Um, Sometimes somebody's good enough, and I say, okay, I will hire you to do this little story or whatever. So that's it's an earn while you learn situation,
okay,
and um, that way I can see. All right, you have 7 days to do these 4 pages. I need to see layouts first. Let's go do this, and I can learn how well the artist communicates, how good their layouts are, how whether they meet the deadline. I can learn an awful lot in that little process of having them do a sample sequence, whether I've hired them or I've just sent them a plot.
okay.
And um, it's interesting how much you learn from the excuses an artist will give you. So you learn the artist's own thinking process, which may not match what the rest of the world thinks sometimes. Uh, like the artists that will, yeah, you give them a job in December and they run late. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I missed the deadline, but Christmas and New Year's interfered. And I'll say, wait, don't Christmas and New Year's fall at the same time every year? Can't
Mhm.
you plan for that? So it's realizing that sometimes an artist isn't real good at reading a calendar or isn't good at communicating.
Yes,
Some
you are an artist and you're trying to do a work. That's a work. You have to submit like it's a 9 to 5 work like anything else.
Yeah,
People think that they're working at home drawing. That's cool. I gotta do it. I don't take the responsibility as a working man.
yeah. A couple of things to note. I've run into some artists that have said, "I really want to draw comics, but I never have time. Never have time." Well, if you got a job, you'd have to, make time, wouldn't you? Yeah, but the inspiration isn't there to do it. And I said, so you don't really want to draw comics. You just kind of want to draw comics. Because if you really wanted to, you'd find the time. It's like, well, it's hard to find 10 hours to draw a comic page. I said, okay, it is. Is it hard to find an hour? Well, no, I could find an hour, but I can't draw a page in an hour. I said, okay, follow me here. Spend 1 hour a day drawing. In 10 days, you'll have a page done. In um, um, in a year, you'll have what, 50 pages? Working just an hour a day? So it's possible if it matters enough.
Yes, I understand that. Right now, David, that thing that it goes through me because right now I'm late for my comic book for the issue number 4, and for me it's a little hard because I have to be the media manager. I have to go through TikTok. I have to go through as a salesperson because I'm trying to sell it and maybe
Mhm.
not conventional and in places and venues and everything.
So
And I don't know how time I go, but I go through. I go truly with my work. I try at my heart, but I'm a little late. Sometimes I sometimes I think it's me. It's I'm having the commitment problem, but I see through the day. I didn't really have the time because if I have the time, I have to do something else. Right now, I have to uh, edit a video. I have to go to proposals. I do a convention in October. It's called Halloween Anime Fest, and last week I haven't touched pages because of that, because I have to go through Halloween Anime Fest and anything. I don't know.
everybody has the same 24 hours in a day, and when you're a comics creator, it's hard. Um, I do not. We were just talking about I don't have enough time to do
Yeah,
a podcast, and it's trying to find the time to do everything is especially in a world where you can very easily spend much more time on social media promoting the book than you actually spend writing and drawing the book. And that's kind of awful. If you were rich, you hire somebody to promote the book for you and you spend your time writing and drawing it. But we're not rich, so we can't do that. So it becomes a problem that everybody faces, trying to balance the time to get the creative done with getting your marketing done. Like I will occasionally launch a Kickstarter for our stuff, and every time I do it, I cringe at how many hours it's going to take to create the Kickstarter, to create the backer kit, to promote the Kickstarter, to deal with the printer, and when the money comes in and the books come in, all those dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of shipping out the books. I just wanted to write them. So that's the
what
way.
happened to me.
Yeah. So I understand the problem. On the other hand, sometimes it takes a very specific mindset to look at your work day and say, all right, I'm going to spend this amount of time doing that job, no matter what. And I went through, most people go through that. They'll work a full-time job and in their off hours, they're trying to create comics. All right. So I went through that for many years until I got into doing what I do now. But we were talking about these books, Goddess Girls, Heroes in Training, and I did another set of books about Greek mythology for an educational publisher. When I was offered these books, I looked at the schedule and I was going to have to write a 150 to 200 page graphic novel every month for 14 months. And I did it. I mean, I set up a schedule. I got up at 8 in the morning. I worked till 3 in the afternoon. I took a 2-hour break with my family. I worked till midnight. And I told my wife, if I don't come to bed at midnight, that means I'm on a roll and I'm going to keep working. But at minimum, I could not go to bed unless I finished 5 pages of full script each day. Some days I did 7, 10. One day I did 18. But I had to get at least 5 done. And I ended up writing 6 Heroes in Training books, 4 Goddess Girls books, and 6 graphic novels for another publisher, and did them all in a 14-month period. It was you know, thousands of pages of work.
Well, yeah.
But I got it done. But I couldn't have done that forever. I did it for that 14-month period, and that's like, okay, I'm exhausted. I'm done. I completed everything in my contract. I'm done. I'm good. And I've not accepted a scripting assignment since, because I know how much time it takes. So I'm very familiar with what you're going through and the amount of hours that you have to spend in a day.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not really an excuse, but sometimes have being like you say focus on a role. I call it the theta focus. That's when the brain you go theta. So sometimes when I focus, I have to stop because when I say, oh, tomorrow I have to work, I have to go to, I have to do something else. I live alone. I have to prepare my lunch. I have to make dinner, and sometimes I broke that focus, and that's the thing. But I understand that's not an excuse. I'm trying to work. I'm trying to apply myself better and more, but sometimes being just alone, doing other stuff. I'm good at pencils. Right now, I'm trying to learn everything about copywriting, about color, uh, and doing anything else on the comic book. I do everything. I want you to see my comic books. I do everything on them
I'd be
because
happy
of
to
that.
take a look when you send them.
Okay, okay, we will do that. Well, sir, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. You have it here. I was wishing to have you here. I wasn't like a uh, I didn't have the valor to call you before on because this is the fourth season. But I think right now it's a special moment to have you here, and thank you for being here. I know that a lot of people has been here and watching you.
Well, I'm glad to have done it. I wish I could have spoken Spanish to the group, but uh, you know,
You don't know anything.
yeah.
You don't know anything.
Yeah.
Not even goodbye.
Unfortunately, not. And the ridiculous part is, my mom speaks Spanish,
Really?
and I just never learned anything. But uh, it would have been nice.
Okay. We have here Juan Carlos. That's one of my friends, but he's the employee of the oldest comic book store here in Puerto Rico,
Hello, Juan Carlos.
Metro Comics. Great interview, this man. And Javier, he has another podcast too. He's my
Thank
friend.
you, Javier.
Uh, yes, it is interesting and everything. I can go through. We are mostly like 2 hours, but it's like I said, you need to do your own podcast because
Yeah.
you have a lot of information that you can give to anyone.
Yeah. Well, if ever you want to do this again, I'm happy to jump on, because doing this is a one shot for an evening. I planned for it. I allowed the time, so we're good.
Okay. Well, let's see. I can bring you back with another time because it was a pleasure, right?
All right.
So
All right.
thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
So, gente, ya saben, se pueden escribir a él, le escriben si quieren entrar sus portfolios. En verdad, muchas gracias que estuvieron con nosotros. Muy buenas tardes, muy buenas noches. Y pues, se le agradece un montón que estuvieron con nosotros aquí. Mi inglés no es muy bueno, pero hice lo más posible. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone who's watching
Thank
in
you.
English.
Good
Have a
night.
nice day. Have a nice day.
Bye bye.